So you know me, I like my kind of character-y videos, and I'm not going to lie, I was kind of really struggling with what to do in this festive season. My inspiration and creativity has taken a dip, as it always does at this time of year. It's grim, ain't it? So I thought I'd do villains again, but Christmas villains. I mean, why not? It's interesting enough, isn't it? We all watch different things at Christmas time. And enjoy different shows and what have you. It's always the villains that stick with us, isn't it? Don't know where that dog's going. So yeah, that's all it is. It's just villains from Christmas films and how I'd scent them. This one is going to be shorter than usual. I'm not going to go too much into the characters or the films or the detail, because yeah, no one wants that round this period, do they? So first up, from an iconic, I don't know what it's on at Christmas, isn't it? One of them films we consider iconic is Die Hard. Personally, I find it quite, it's a dreadful film, isn't it? Bruce Willis and the legendary Alan Rickman. So we know what's coming. Yes, it's Hans Gruber, who is like an international, he's a thief, I suppose, isn't he? A bank robber, whatever. Was trying to get 640 million. That German accent is as good as Alan Rickman's in it, so give me a break. Yeah, I'm Hans Gruber. So how would we send Hans Gruber? Who's a smooth, suave, quite bloody awful villain, isn't he, really? He is quite vindictive and not at all a pleasant chap, despite his class and elegance and being Alan Rickman. So what have I picked for that? Oh, come on. It's got to be a Hugo Boss fragrance. We may as well go for the most iconic of them all. One of the best selling fragrances ever, really, as well, isn't it? And that's Boss Bottled, which is ultimately it's woods. It's got, traditionally with Hugo Boss fragrances, we've got an awful lot of notes in them, but we all know this one. It's got that woods, it's got that kind of touch of a kind of aromatic feel, but it's the apple, and it's kind of started a phase of apple being used a lot, I think, but the apple isn't that horrible plastic apple you tend to get in stuff. Is it darker? Not really, but it's not like a green Granny Smith apple. It's there, but it doesn't stand out. It's blended in with all the other notes. I'd even say, trying to remember the original, isn't it? It quite leathery. I did obviously have this in the day. A leathery feel in the bottom, maybe again probably from some of the resins, I'd say. But it's lovely and iconic, and we all know it. And of course, Hans Gruber would wear this. So for Hans Gruber from Die Hard is Hugo Boss's Boss Bottled. Next we have one of my great heroes of literature, and he certainly is a villain. Apparently, I don't think he is. He's just, he's just trying to get by. Well, that's Ebenezer Scrooge, who appears in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. I'm not going to go, I could get lost in talking about Charles Dickens and what a great writer for his age he was. He did miss the point with many things, obviously from the background he was from, but he did highlight how bloody miserable it was for people in poverty. And obviously nowadays we live back in a Dickensian time where we're just exploited by the rich and they take all of it. But anyway, Ebenezer Scrooge is a chap who owns a very successful business, and he takes great pleasure in making other people miserable. He works his staff to death. He's a lonely person who all he's concerned about is making more and more and more money. As these more capitalistic kind of people do. So he's very miserable and alone, and he doesn't like anyone. So what fragrance would go for him there? Well, he's obviously going to wear something extremely classy and pricey, and that represents his favourite thing in life. So it's Amouage Gold. Now, Amouage Gold is It's kind of a nod to Chanel number 5. It's got the same touch of the kind of golden ylang ylang about it. It's got the aldehydes, it's got that gorgeous lily of the valley. It's got the touch of the civet in the base. It's very, very classy, very elegant, very kind of vintagey. And obviously Ebenezer Scrooge would, I think he'd smell good. I know he spends a lot of time on his own and that, but he'd want to smell good just for him, wouldn't he? He'd want to wear a perfume that, you know, shows off the only thing he succeeded in life, making lots of money. Obviously at the end of the story he has a change of heart, he's visited by 3 ghosts, and he becomes apparently a good man. Does he heck? Does he heck? How long do we think that really lasts? But yes, that's Ebenezer Scrooge and Amouage Girl. Next is a weird fragrance for Christmas. But I don't know what it was like elsewhere, but when I was a kid, Star Wars was on Granada when we were children every Christmas, and obviously we got to see all 3 of them back then, and these films were alright. You know, they were the greatest films ever. I'm a more Star Trek person. They were good before they got ruined by modern times and cashing in on something. Anyway, the main kind of villain, if you like, of Star Wars is, of course, Darth Vader. Is it Anakin Skywalker? Luke's father. Now, Darth Vader is, you know, he's kind of he's not the Don, but he's kind of the main kind of guy doing all the bad and sorting everything out for Emperor Palpatine. See, I remember stuff. And he's kind of, you know, he's dressed all in black. He's got that little black helmet. So what would suit him? Obviously, you know, Bvlgari's Man in Black. Now, the reason is, we know that he's not all bad. He's just been corrupted by the dark side. And he would probably smell, especially the original actor who was inside the suit, was a farmer, wasn't he? So he'd smell of flowers and all things like that. Now, Man in Black is kind of beautiful, boozy, tuberose. There's the leather, which obviously is the blackness. Some nice dark woods in there. There's this lovely spice to it all as well, which just makes it really, really classy and elegant. Now, it often gets compared to Spice Bomb. Similar profile, but not the same fragrance by a million miles. This has finesse and class, which, let's face it, Darth Vader certainly had a lot of finesse and class. And like I say, that little bit of goodness in him is the boozy, happy, jolly tuberose and kind of sweet floral feel to it. So for Darth Vader from Star Wars is Bvlgari's Man in Black. We then have another proper legend, and that's Krampus. He's just a villain of Christmas. Krampus is a kind of a mythical being. Did he exist? I think he probably did exist before that fat guy in a red suit that didn't wear a red suit. It's just Coca-Cola make him wear a red suit. He wore a green suit originally, didn't he? The old patron saint of prostitutes, Saint Nicholas. But no, Krampus was more of a realistic figure, a dark figure. And rather than being rewarded for being good, which you just should be anyway, Krampus punished those who were bad, those naughty kids. He'd kidnap them and whip their feet and drag them through town and put them through all sorts of, you know, torture and what have you. Now, I'm not saying you should beat your kids, that's a bit wrong. We're not in them days anymore. But yeah, I think a more kind of way of ensuring that people are good is perhaps to be punished for being naughty, more so than being rewarded for doing things you should already be doing anyway. I mean, we don't get to the age 50 and get a big check from the king saying, well done, you've not murdered anyone, do we? So, do you know what I mean? I think Krampus sends a better message, and should be brought. Obviously, he's been brought back in films very badly. But yes, I'll keep waffling on about Krampus. How would I scent him? Well, I'd give him Dior Homme Parfum, of course. Again, another classy, beautiful, dark leather one. A little sprinkle of that rose in there and the orris. It's kind of got a little kind of, again, a boozy touch about it. The orris iris is more on the floral side. It does have that kind of little kiss of lipstick, but I wouldn't call it a lipsticky fragrance necessarily. This, it's more of a vein of that going through it like the original. And the rose, which most people don't really smell in it, maybe it's because again I'm not the biggest rose fan, adds a bit of redness, a bit of powderiness. I think that's where a lot of that comes from in it, actually, more so than the iris. And then there's the black dark leather, like I say, the beautiful ambrette musk kind of. I think there's also a kind of tiny hint of oud, and this kind of dark, smooth, black, little bit floral kind of fragrance I think would suit Krampus really, really well. He'd obviously smell good, why wouldn't he? You know, so yeah, for Krampus is Dior Homme Parfum. Next is from one of my favourite ever Christmas films, the Wallace Gromit series. I think this is the wrong trousers. I stand to be corrected there. I'll probably flash it up on the screen, but I think it's the wrong trousers. And it's Feathers McGraw, who was a mute penguin who comes to live with Wallace and Gromit. He seems like a pleasant chap, you know, he goes about his business. Nobody really suspects anything about him. But it turns out he's been robbing some local museums and things of precious gems and whatnot. And he disguises himself by wearing a red rubber glove on his head. So everyone thinks that they're looking for a rooster. Not in fact a malevolent penguin. And Feathers McGraw, he's a great villain. Again, maybe because he doesn't say anything, he has them kind of looks in his eyes and stuff, and he is quite chilling in his own way. And I absolutely love these films. Anyway, how have I scented him? Well, I've gone for Lovefest Burning Cherry. I think that's what it's called, from Kayali. This one is lovely. It's kind of a smoky cherry, some rose, some incense, and the kind of woody notes at the bottom. And you know what, this is really good. I really enjoy this. It's not like your lost cherry kind of thing, although that kind of boozy cherry opening, not really to me. This is more cherry than a kind of cherry almondy feel, and the rose adds the bit of redness and something there. And then the incense, it does actually smell like a burning cherry when it actually opens. It's lovely. And I think Feathers McGraw, who nobody would suspect of anything, would wear kind of a subtle, pleasant fragrance there in plain sight, but that little bit of smokiness and that naughty cherry, that should give you a little clue that he's not all as he seems. So yeah, for Feathers McGraw from Wallace and Gromit is Kayali's lost cherry burning. I'll start again. Lovefest Burning Cherry. There we are. Next is another great hero of mine, the Grinch from The Grinch. Now I'm going to confuse the heck out of my view of the Grinch, because obviously I'm thinking of the Jim Carrey version, but I have watched the goddamn cartoon version so many times. It's going to have warped my mind. I've got a young niece. The Grinch is, you know, he's a bit of a loner. He's a bit kind of grumpy. He doesn't really like people. I mean, who would? He just basically wants to be left alone to crack on with things and be miserable. And he has all this happiness and joy and all that nonsense forced upon him. So, you know, he does some naughty things. You know, and he's green. You know, I'd be a bit annoyed if I was green. So what am I going to go for the Grinch? Well, actually, I've gone for Ray-Flection from Masque Milano, and I know what you're all thinking with that. What? But I find the Grinch a breath of fresh air. He's honest. You know, he doesn't need to do all this Christmas pretense where we pretend to love each other and want to make everyone happy. He just wants to be left alone. And Ray-Flection is this beaming, massive, kind of a luminous sunshine fragrance. It's mimosa. Again, I always say it, I'm sure there's osmanthus in there. There's aldehydes. There's these beautiful musks. It's just huge and yellow. Yeah, I know the Grinch is green, but I think inside he's feeling this when he's his normal self. He's quite happy enough just to be left alone. So for the Grinch is Masque Milano's Ray-Flection. And finally, one of the worst fragrances I have smelt this year suits this person down to the ground. Now, he is considered a Christmas villain because he actually cancelled Christmas and made it illegal. Because he was an absolute religious psychopath. He was a Puritan. He was not a king, but had more power than any king had ever had in the history of this country. And to say we've had some bad, evil kings and queens is an understatement. And that is, of course, Oliver Cromwell. You know, some people find him a bit of a hero. If you like genocidal maniacs who ban everything fun and take the misery out of anything and punishes everyone and takes more power than a king, if you think that's a decent person, hats off to you. However, I don't, and neither, I would imagine, would many Irish people, to be fair, or non-Puritan people who he massacred. But yes, Oliver Cromwell. How would I scent such an evil, deplorable Christmas villain? Well, like I say, it's a Charlotte Tilbury fragrance, and it's called More Sex. I mean, the name alone is a complete crime, isn't it? Who the hell? Who names these people? Do they get 15-year-old little kind of teenage boys to name fragrances? Now, what is More Sex? It's pepper, inverted commas, musk, or like a ton of cashmere, and kind of beef. Yeah, you heard me right. This kind of overcooked beef smell in there. It is awful. Again, this is another one was hyped. Like all this line was hyped. It was actually really tricky to pick the worst from the bunch, because my God, Oliver Cromwell would own the set. He'd have no doubt been gifted the set, being who he was, but he'd have owned the set of them. But this is just the worst. This is just the most miserable, awful excuse for a fragrance. This is, you know, it represents the meaning being taken out of fragrance, you know, the creativity and the joy, which is what Cromwell did to all festivals and stuff like that. So yeah, I think for Oliver Cromwell is More Sex from Charlotte Tilbury. So yeah, that's it. Ho ho ho. Happy merry festivities. Don't know when this one will come out, whether it'll be before or after. You know me, planning is not my forte. But yeah, it's just a bit of fun, just something I didn't need to think about for a lot. What about you? Who are your Christmas villains? How would you scent them? Did you love the same films as me? I know it probably is a very big cultural difference of what we get on TV round the festive period. So I'll be interested to hear about people from across the water, what they watched as Christmas films and what they consider villains, because obviously again, cultural differences. One man's villain is another man's hero and all that, isn't it? So yeah, merry festivities, or if it's already been and gone, I hope you had a fine winter solstice and got all you dreamt of. Hopefully what we all dream of is a bit of peace and quiet and silence in the world, isn't it? Well, yes, bye bye.